Today, we're looking forward to a panel discussion hosted by Linda on how talent and IT can partner for impact. In this 40-minute panel discussion, two leaders from the world's digital giants in their talent, technology, and skills development sector share their marketing sensing research and emerging trends with us as well. They're giving us insights into how that all comes together to inform their product development and go-to-market strategy. From this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, you might get insights to help shape your company strategy, your people's career aspirations, IT and business leaders' future-focused capacity and skills needs. Linda, we're looking forward to a mind-blowing discussion. If I can ask you to please start off by introducing your international and local panelists.
I'd like to start by extending a special welcome to Michael Baker, Cornerstone Group Vice President for Sales and Account Management for Europe, Middle East and Africa. Mike is an Australian who grew up in Sydney, but today him and his family live in Berkshire in the southwest of the UK, about 60 kilometers from London. He's happily married, living in a typical English village surrounded by forests and close to lakes. He still calls Australia his home. He has his family have two very busy boys. And Mike said you might hear them in the background on the session. So Mike spends most of his time ferrying and taxiing his kids to outdoor sports activities, which is no surprise because they are half Australian. Mike's personal passions are travel, sports, and outdoor activities. And Mike, it's lovely to have you with us today. Thank you. I'm delighted to introduce Matthew Blitzer, Global Head of Regional Sales at Skillsoft. He prefers to be called Matt, so we'll do that going forward. He most recently served as Vice President Security Sales, IBM Americas, where he was responsible for all security-related products and services. Matt is a transformational business executive with over 20 years' experience in enterprise sales, leadership, operational P&L management, as well as strategic alliances across the technology landscape, including enterprise software, cloud, IT outsourcing, and infrastructure services. That's quite a mouthful. Matt currently lives in Cary, North Carolina, and currently the time there is around 11 a.m. in the morning. Yes. Matt lives with his wife, Colleen, has two of their 4 children. In his leisure time, Matt enjoys cooking, entertaining, and is an avid tennis player. Matt, thanks for your time. And we're looking forward in particular to hear your IT and tech insights. My brother from another mother, Erwin van Stavel, Senior Partner at LRMG, who's been at LRMG for 21 years. Erwin loves finding new and practical ways to solve complex challenges, and he agitates for change. Erwin is lucky enough to live in Knysna on the Garden Route, which is down the road from where I am in Plettenberg Bay, where he manufactures time beyond running 5 LRMG businesses to play golf, fish, camp, and be outdoors with his family and friends. He's a keen bushy, and if he had to make a career change, he would opt to be a game ranger. Erwin is married to a woman he describes as more beautiful than I deserve. He has 3 amazing daughters and a 5-year-old little man that keeps him very busy. Erwin often underplays his role as a connector and a thought leader in the field of talent advisory. So I'm going to caution you right up front to look out for what I call IBS gems from Erwin today. Last but definitely not least, welcome Ryan Sillishan, recently appointed as LRMG Senior Partner. Congrats, Ryan, a really well-deserved appointment. And personally, I'm super excited to see where you'll take the talent technology crusade across Africa as the LRMG Talent Management Technology Lead. That's also a mouthful. All I can say is watch this space, folks. More about Ryan. He thrives on challenges and solving complex problems. However, his passion outside work is cars, and apparently lots of them. Racing, building, enjoying them at every chance he gets. He says he's lucky to have a wonderful wife who enjoys the same passion. They have 2 furry babies who keep their entire neighborhood awake at night. Although, Ryan, I think it might be some of those cars that might keep the neighborhood awake as well. So welcome to the panel, Ryan. Just to set the scene for this particular discussion, what we're currently seeing across clients and vendor engagements is that when IT and talent leaders get their digital handshake or collaboration right, there's tremendous power that's unlocked, which really has massive business impact. And it's incredibly powerful to see that in action. And we've seen it in some of the case studies today. So it's a privilege to have a global panel where we're going to share research, mega trends, use cases, stories, insights to assist in solving the skills and talent challenges we have. We'll hear about finding and building future fit IT skills. We certainly want to tackle the real issue of the IT skills brain drain, and how we see IT and talent avoid what we're seeing at the moment as a particular blind spot, where they're potentially missing each other. You know, it sometimes seems that IT is particularly paranoid about adding HR platforms and systems into their tech stack and tech environment, which, in my humble opinion, often paralyzes HR in delivering talent at the ask of business. So our aim is for you to walk away with a view on how to build more deliberate partnerships. We're going to let the conversation flow and, yeah, just have fun for the next few minutes. So, gents, yeah, let's get started. Research and trends. What is emerging in your space in terms of mega trends? What are you seeing? I know we saw a session earlier from Mark from Skillsoft. I mean, he shared some unbelievable insights, but what are you seeing trending in the marketplace that really can enable this digital handshake between IT and HR? If, Mike, we can start with you, then to Matt, and then Irv and Ryan, if I can ask you to just give us a context from Africa and Mauritius as well, just to close that off. So I'm not going to interrupt the session. Mark, let's start with you, then go to Matt, then go to Ryan, then go to Erwin. And yeah, take it away. What are you seeing? Mega trends and challenges.
Thanks, Linda. And firstly, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for everybody for attending the session. It's an honor and privilege to speak to you all. Look, I think from my perspective, there's probably 2 to 3 mega trends. I mean, there's obviously lots of things going on. That it's a space where there's a constant change. But from what we're seeing at Cornerstone, there's probably 2 or 3 mega trends, and the first of those is really all about skills. And what we're seeing is skills is not a new concept, and we've been talking about skills for many years, but it's really been accelerated with the pace of change, partly driven by the pandemic, but also driven by digital and business transformation. And what our research is showing at the moment is that companies are less and less thinking about the number of roles they have or who they have in roles, but more about what collections of skills they have. So not how many project managers do I have, but how many people in my business understand agile project management methodology. And so what we're seeing is in our research is very much a clear link between high performing businesses and those that have a really well-defined skills strategy and solution. But at the same time, paradoxically, we're also seeing a growing gap between what companies believe they're delivering in terms of skills and development versus what employees' expectations is for that. So, you know, what we're seeing around skills is that companies who want to be resilient to unexpected change, inflation, pandemic, you know, digitalization or war, they really need to have a foundation around addressing and building and predicting skills. And then that really then plays into one of the other, or the 2 other key trends that I see. One is the role of artificial intelligence, and the other is the importance of HR having a seat at the table. And just to touch on those points very quickly, I think, you know, AI, the pace of change is so impressive that really the ability for human intervention alone can't keep up with the changes happening. And whether that's about, you know, and I work with a lot of companies who spend years and millions of dollars potentially building out full skills libraries and taxonomies for their business, only to find out as soon as they've finished them that they're out of date already. And I think that's a real challenge. And so applying AI to that, to be able to bring new skills in, predicting future skills and proximity is really important. You know, just the volume of content that's available and being able to curate that with, you know, AI is very, very important. And then, you know, having the machine do the learning for you. And I think that's really, really crucial second trend. And then the third trend to touch on very quickly is then with all of those things coming together and the strategic nature of driving change in business, it's never been more important than now for HR to have a seat at the top table, you know, and I think that's really important when you start talking about HR and IT. It's not really a conversation between IT simplicity and HR functionality. It's really about a partnership, because it's about critical business need, and really about identifying risks, new skills, retention of employees, and how the business is going to set themselves up for success and the ability to be agile in the future. So very quickly, I suppose, but those are the three key trends that I see is, HR at the top table, skills and modern technology around AI to deliver it.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Listen, well, Mike, a lot to chew on there. First, I would like to echo your comments about being here. Thank you for having me and the rest of the Skillsoft team. We really value the partnership with everybody on the call today, and the ability to bring some thought and insight to a really growing and important region. I will echo what Mike said. I think that we're all going to navigate around the same broad topics. From our perspective, I think that concept of roles to skills and the convergence of learning with business outcomes, right? So you talk about HR at the top table, HRIT handoff. I think what we see is, and according to, and you may have seen this from Mark, according to the World Economic Forum, 50% of all employees are going to need to be reskilled by 2025. Same report, 94% of business leaders expect their employees to learn new skills on the job. So how do you learn, how do you create a platform and the ability to reskill, but then reskill while in motion? From a Skillsoft perspective, we really think about it from a measure, fortify, and index perspective. And that actually Michael bring in that AI piece as well. So first, a company needs to know, an organization needs to know what skills it has. In order to do that, you have to be able to benchmark and measure what you have. You have to be able to then build out the capability, right? Which is the fortify. And that process is about where you bring in that dynamic AI, ML driven learning capability, where these learning paths have to be a bit more dynamic, right? And you have to be able to build to constantly be able to refresh the learning paths in order to be able to, future fit and talk about those adjacent spaces you might want to get to, or the future fit skills you're looking for. You have to develop a roadmap for the future skills, right? So that's, in order for it to be able to work, you have to be thinking ahead, and again, thinking about the confluence of HR with the rest of the business, not just IT. That requires a great deal of collaboration. And then you have to index. You have to know what you have, and you have to be able to say, then, in order for us to go from point A to point B, so from this skill set to the next gen or adjacent skill set, what do we have inside of our four walls? And then how do we build a cohort, right, that will allow us to move more quickly rather than have to go to market to pursue. I think that the concept that you raised, Mike, around moving from role focused to a skill focused is really critical. It's that concept of, a hard capability, right? Or maybe you call it a data analyst, AI ML specialist, process automation, and moving to layering skills, right? This is really a trend. How do you layer skills on top of the hard capabilities to create a broader and more well-rounded member of your team who can then actually potentially move into different spaces? And I think that layering is really important. And in order to do this, it requires a really close partnership with the rest of the business beyond just learning and having the right metrics and focus. So I think I'm actually agreeing with Mike. I think the trends are all similar. You can phrase them as workforce transformation, reskilling, upskilling at the speed of business. But they all require, and I think this is a theme that will continue, objective measurements and a consistent set of objective measurements and remeasuring in order to be productive.
Thanks, Matt. I like the objectivity. Ryan, from your side?
Yes, Linz, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for the opportunity. From our perspective, I think I can't reiterate what Mike and Matt said, because it is extremely important in the space we play in. I think a lot of the time in Africa, we leapfrog, let alone technology, but the adoption of technology too, and we sometimes leave that by the wayside. What we're seeing a lot of, given the Gen Z coming into the market right now, is again around skills, but predominantly around talent mobility. The gig economy coming into play. How does that play out for individuals that are joining the workforce but don't necessarily want a full-time job? They want to be able to contract around. How are we able to skill individuals for that and ensure that they are adding value to the highest point of their contribution in whatever role they're playing within the organization? And then probably second to that is, how do we ensure that talent is not just for me? Now, what I mean by that is, it's not just for a line manager. Talent is for the organization. How do we protect the talent and not allow talent to leave the organization because they're leaving a certain team because of the opportunities they have within that team? Let's rather look at how can we retain talent in the broader organization and ensure that we're meeting business objectives by bringing in the talent that we need. Right now, it's not a case of, I think 10, 20, 30 years ago, where talent is a dime a dozen and we get to pick, choose, and refuse from individuals. It's got to be a marriage that's made from a perspective of an individual that wants to join the organization as much as the organization wants them to join us. And that's really key for us. And when we get that alignment, then we're suddenly able to ensure talent mobility and success for the organization, because the war really is for talent currently.
Yeah, I love that choose and refuse. I think though, around, and Irv, maybe you want to also add, I know we've got the generational, there's a lot of youngsters in Africa, we know that, but I think we're seeing that gig across more than just the young generation. But not speaking on behalf of people, in the older space. Irv, from your side, what do you see?
Yeah, it's hard to go last. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Another challenge.
I think there's an opportunity here to take what Matt and Mike, and Ryan spoken about, and think about it as what I refer to the trend being around this idea of skills everboarding.
Yes.
Because, to be honest, the shelf life of skills are just like they're speeding up, right? So if you dependent on one skill to make progress in a job or in a talent position, tomorrow someone else is competing and they're moving ahead of you. So the speed of business is actually the speed of change. And what we're seeing happening is that there's actually this idea of a compete to reskill. And so if you're creating using the interfaces of Cornerstone and the content of Skillsoft, if you can create this compete for everboarding skill sets, get them on the super highway of skills, no limitations, no priorities, but competing for that forward movement, I think that's where we're seeing the shift happening. And it's interesting to think that when we think of onboarding, it's a once-off exercise, right? People come in, they get onboarded, all good, tick a box, but we're changing strategies now. They're saying, and I heard Mark talk about it the other day as well, strategies are not long-term processes, they're 90-day evolution. So if the strategies are shifting every 90 days, should your skills not shift to be able to deliver on those 90-day cycles? And I think, imagine if we were creating that as a mega trend, then we're liberating and we're massifying for a skills competition as opposed to static skill development. So I think that's one that I just want to leverage on what the gents were talking about as potentially where we can go with this as a mega trend. The other one really, Ryan's touched on it, and I don't want to go to mobility again, but talent everywhere is kind of the idea. You think about talent in LRMG, for example, individuals all got their own shaping where they want to go. They want to enable themselves to get there. So I think when we talk about the digital handshake, if IT can provide HR with the kind of talent data required at the interface, then HR can enable managers to use talent more effectively. And I think that's where the handshake potentially could happen. So not to overdo it, those are the kinds of things that I think at a mega trend level, it's more driven by what people are trying to hire platforms and content and skills to do for them, as opposed to what we are trying to hire them to do for us. And that's the flip that's just happened, I've seen over the last year.
And it's a fantastic place to flip as well, because the timing is good. You know, I was doing some research for the session and I saw a white paper from Cornerstone, in fact, in 2020, and it was titled License to Skill. And it was probably ahead of its time, Mike. But the point is, that's exactly where we go. And you're talking liberating, massifying, you know, that license to skill piece is really on trend. And so with that in mind, you know, the next question I have for yourself, so we've talked about all the trends and the mega trends and what we're thinking. I'm quite keen to hear, you know, some of your stories and where you've seen this shift. And Ryan, I know we saw some stories today from Yandri, but where you've seen this happening, you know, and particularly, you know, tackle conversations around certification, which is potentially controversial because it's certifications versus degrees, you know, and qualifications. The topic of women in technology, hype or reality, you know, Mike, from your side, what you're seeing with ERP versus a different tech stack. So Matt, maybe just to you, you know, certifications, that type of stuff coming from your background, the importance of that. And then Mike from your side, and then Ryan, and then Irv, if I can ask you to wrap again on that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure, Linda. I think, you know, if I can frame it in the context of the discussion today, which is around IT and HR, the world that I come from most recently before Skillsoft was a cyber world. And in that world, you know, cyber is a team sport, right? Certainly there's an element of compliance and business risk related to the certifications and the speed at which you need to continue to evolve your capabilities. But I also believe that learning and capability development is especially as we work around organizations around the world, we're seeing the confluence of core learning with hard skills, right? And the certification needs. And that is relatively new, right? Connecting the dots between organizational goals versus specific outcomes, where we'd look at a cert for cybersecurity, whether it's CISSP or network security, would be seen by the IT organization in a silo, perhaps, right? But as we talk about service delivery and the risk, you know, it's even become at that level, those certs and these capabilities become a board level issue with lots of companies, right? So the importance of being able to plan and then track and then progress becomes a core business issue rather than just an IT or an HR issue separately. I think that there's, you know, we talked about onboarding. There's so many different pieces to it. You know, what are you onboarding for, right? Are you onboarding for a hard skill versus a broader capability, right? So there's a place for a hard skill from a broad capability perspective requires the IT and HR organizations to be working much more in concert about what skills are trying to develop and what problems we're trying to solve from an organizational perspective. Do you have the right certs, right certifications? What is the speed to deployment, the ability to measure? So you can get a cert, people talk about their capabilities, but does that mean they've got the ancillary skills around that certification that you're going to need to be able to be a broader, more effective team member? And then, you know, I think that learning paths geared towards hard and softer skills, right? To be more well-rounded. Ultimately, the partnership between the IT organizations and the HR and learning organizations and broader business, they have to grow. And we're seeing that across the gamut from our clients between onboarding, the connection between onboarding, speed to capability, speed to deployment, and then the ability to manage the certifications in the context of that onboarding to be able, especially for service delivery organizations. If you're in a regulated industry, if you're in banking, if you're in utility, if you're in government, if you're in any of those, you have to be able to prove the capability, right?
Yes.
but that capability is not static. It has to be continually developed. So, and I think that then that when we talk about to what Ryan said about the ability to retain that talent, I think that's if we're developing for a complete individual and a complete capability beyond just a hard skill, I think that probably creates a bit of stickiness, and we're seeing that with our clients around the world where this is being deployed. There's definitely an employee stickiness, which is a positive for all organizations.
Absolutely. I love that word stickiness. It's an LRNG word, which is also fabulous. But the stickiness, and you said the concept of speed, measurement, fabulous. Thank you for that. And just such a different perspective from an IT person on certification, cyber as a team sport. Mike, your thoughts? I know you've got lots of views on this.
It's a big topic, and there's lots to say on it. I'd love to come back in on the concept that Ryan was talking about on the gig economy. We're seeing lots of really interesting ways that that's being interpreted by our customers and by the research that we've done. But before I go there, I would agree, again, find myself in sort of violent agreement with Matt on everything that he just talked about. I would say from a cornerstone perspective, I think there's a tendency, what we see in the market at the moment is there is a trend where it's like a buzzword where it's all about learning engagement, and we're forgetting about the fundamentals that what companies need strategically to drive their business forward. And I think you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. I think there is a happy marriage between the two that can be found. We tend to at Cornerstone talk about the you, me, we approach, which is just a way that we frame this conversation, which is the you being what's right for you as a business. What are the strategic objectives that you need to drive, to Matt's point? What are the things that are really important for you from a compliance or certification or capability perspective that are core to your business goals, versus what's important for me as an individual, versus how do we collaborate? And maybe a good example for this, and it's something that I talk to a lot of our customers about, is there will be strategic learning goals that you have as an organization. And if we're bringing this in with IT, for example, IT may be saying, well, look, as part of our transformation initiatives, our digitalization journey, we're going to really need to put a lot of our processes into the cloud. And therefore, I need people who understand Microsoft Azure technology. And so I need them to go and learn how to do that. I need to reskill them on that technology. It's fundamental to the success and the sustainability and resilience of our business. So it's really pushing that out, but doing it in a way that it is engaging and makes sense and is critical for your business. That's the you. That's what's important for the business. Then being able to track that, being able to see the capability that you're building, being able to understand as a business, where are the skills gaps that I have? Where do I need to invest in the future and to meet those objectives? But then as an employee, one of the critical things, and again, using IT as an example, one of the highest churn areas of any business, you get upwards of 40% churn in your business. So you need to retain your people. So you have to let them learn what they want to learn, right? And again, using IT as an example, but this applies across the business. IT are going to want to learn the newest, coolest thing all the time. And so therefore, they're going to need to be able to have hyper-personalized content that's contextual to their skills and their desires, their career paths, because that's what's going to give them that, will help break down that gap between what the company thinks they're delivering and their expectations. So that's the me. And then there's the we. Then it's about how do we collaborate and break down those silos altogether. So, that could be around user-generated content, or it could be connecting learners, to Ryan's point, with gigs, to really test that capability and see whether or not we're able to deliver against the learning objectives that we've had. I work with a lot of customers, Schneider Electric, for example, who are really moving away from tracking training hours to tracking training outcomes, right? And building capability. So I think, being able to connect people in that collaborative way together is really important. And I think that's what we're really seeing as those some of the to address some of those things. And then you talked about the gender equality and some of those other topics is very, very important. And I think and I don't want to sort of skip over it, but it's so, you know, it's part of this is very important to be able to have, you know, AI that is, it's gender neutral. It's going to be based on skills. It's going to allow you to see the jobs that are there based on the skills that you have and the capability that you've built, nothing to do with your gender or your race. And I think that's where, you know, it becomes a real power for not just for business strategy, but a power for good in society as well, you know, because it breaks down some of the unconscious bias that sometimes come into these plays. But I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I won't.
I'm going to run out of time, but Mark, yeah, I'm going to jump in there. I mean, AI that's gender neutral, fabulous. Ryan, from your side?
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, I know we saw case studies today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's really, I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. I'm going to come at this from an onboarding and where we've seen ROI and impact and measurement of that ROI be a fantastic story for our clients, which I think sometimes HR doesn't necessarily get right, and IT tends to focus a lot on you know, reduction of costs and a measurement of what is the impact. I think that handshake, digital handshake, can be real tangible evidence. And I'm going to give an example of in the case of onboarding. Onboarding really needs to deliver on what recruitment is selling. Now, what I mean by that is we sell a good game in terms of bringing in talent and attracting talent. But when you land in the organization, your onboarding experience is the first thing that makes you think maybe this wasn't the right choice for me, because it can tend to be manual and laborious. And linking that back to actual ROI and value and impact, you know, in simple example of one of our clients where we looked at, let's say, for example, a 50,000 Rand or a $3,000 salary average across the board, a 10% attrition rate of 1,000 employees in the organization, and a waste of 2 weeks for every new person from a time to be productive. You're looking at 2.5 million Rand or 150 odd $1,000 being wasted annually because we're not reducing time to productivity. Now, that's a hard, tangible example of how we can deliver impact and ROI in things like onboarding, which, you know, extend a little bit away from the skills conversation we're having, but is certainly prevalent in terms of what we're saying from a value and impact across the board when talking digital transformation or HR and IT projects.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to jump in there. I see we've been pushed to close, so it's just gone by so quickly. Not to jump, but I think, yeah, let's get a final word from you. The handshake, the stories are amazing. I think we'll have to set up another time to have a longer conversation.
Yeah, it looks like someone's wound up the clock on us. But
I know.
I think if we boil this down to the simplicity of the opportunity we have in the digital handshake with HR is, you know, the summary of it is organizations like Cornerstone Skillsoft are expending massive amounts of money on the AI. And they know why. Because to try and manually manage talent is, to use a good Australian word, it's hard. It's extremely tough. And so if you trust the AI and you trust the tech, you will achieve probably 3 things that all the gentlemen have been speaking about. 1, a purpose-led technology utilization. So there's purpose driving it. You, me, we, purpose-led, you know, connector is there, and the AI will provide that. We're hyper-personalizing. People feel that this is for them, just for you, just for me, just in time, all the things we spoke about. And then the third thing, which I think is probably with the skills of evolution and not about jobs anymore. If jobs are not the major objective, then why are we not scaling skills for relevance? And I think the scaling skills for relevance means that when you are entering the space and your mindset's right for skills and you're acquiring at hyper speed, hyper personalized and purpose driven, you will be more relevant. And so let's shift the dependency on HR and IT to find themselves and to find a love affair, which doesn't often happen. When it does, you can see the exponentiality of it. But let's rather shift the lens to the consumer and using the AI from an HR and IT perspective to make the consumer felt like you're serving them. And I think that's where we're all going. Hopefully, you know, our clients, current, future, and other, will lean into that opportunity, whether you're in IT, HR, business, line, wherever you might be, and trust the tech. it will provide you with the opportunity to be more relevant as a leader, as a business, and then as a learner. I think that's been
Thanks, Irv. Yeah, it's a little bit like that Facebook status. It's going from it's complicated to in a relationship.